Have you ever wondered to yourself, how does fat loss really work? Well, if you have, this video is really going to help you out because I'm going to unpack everything for you and teach you how body fat truly works, how to lose more of it, how different body fat trends work for different individuals. But I'm also going to go over the mindset shift that you need to know when it comes to losing body fat. That way you can have better success. Now, I'm going to say this a lot, and I want to make sure that you remember this. Fat loss is not linear. You're going to hear me say that so much as we progress through today's episode. Fat loss is not linear. Think in terms of fat loss as kind of like the stock market. Some stocks go down, some stocks go up. Now, here's the key. When you understand your trends, specifically for your body type, it makes a world of a difference. It's kind of like peace of mind. Because now, if you're ever gaining body fat, or let's say not losing body fat, you're kind of at this stall or this plateau. Who knows? It might be just how your body fat trends are designed. Let me explain a little bit more. So for the first fat loss trend, this is where somebody starts off where, hey, they immediately start losing some body fat. But then, right, they kind of have this little spike, a little jump up where the body fat actually increases. But sure enough, they stayed consistent. They didn't give up. They didn't throw in the towel and quit. They trusted the process, and they started losing more body fat, And then once again, maybe something else happens where the body fat just takes a little dive going up, and that's okay, right? It's okay if that happens, and you'll understand why as we progress through today's fat loss video. But sure enough, because they didn't give up, the body fat drops again. So for that individual, their trends look a lot like this. They start losing body fat, gain some body fat, losing body fat, gain body fat, losing body fat, gain body fat, losing body fat, gaining body fat, losing body fat. But because they trusted the process, because they were consistent and didn't give up, they eventually reached their goals. Now, the second fat loss trend, it kind of looks the same as the first, but here's where it's a little bit different. Their body fat doesn't increase. They just kind of hit this stall where it doesn't move at all. It doesn't go down. It doesn't go up. And for some, that could be very frustrating because it's like, man, I'm doing all the right things, like I'm getting my steps in, I'm working out, I'm hitting my macro goals, but it's not moving at all. Like I was on point this whole entire week, right? What's the deal here? But once again, you got to understand your trends. So for this individual, right, they're going to lose body fat. They're going to hit this little stall. Lose more body fat, hit this little stall. Lose more body fat, hit this little stall. Lose more body fat. So once again, that's how it looks for that person. But because once again, they were consistent, they didn't just throw in the towel and quit and go back to their old ways of feeding the bad wolf. No, they trusted the process and they were able to reach their goals. Now for the third fat loss trend, this is an emotional roller coaster ride. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because that's how my body fat trends are. And this is where, hey, you start losing body fat. And then all of a sudden, one or two things are going to happen. And it's frustrating. I understand completely. But as we progress through today's episode, you're going to have that mindset shift. We're going to realize here that, hey, it doesn't even matter too much about the trends. Okay, you'll understand why as we progress here. But when you hit this little stall, one or two things are going to happen. Okay, so you start off by losing body fat, and then either you hit this plateau or the body fat increases. Okay, so you're like, oh man, what am I doing? Like, should I do something wrong? Should I switch this up? Right? You kind of get paranoid a little bit. But once again, right, understanding your trends makes a world of a difference because you continue to trust the process, the body fat drops, right? Big drop, boom. But then you hit that little stall again. And either it's for a few weeks, the body fat's not really moving, little plateau, right? Or it spikes up a little bit. And now, once again, you're kind of getting paranoid here. But trust the process, stay consistent, feed the good wolf, right? Hit your goals, focus on your habits. You eventually drop more body fat. So it's really good to understand those trends because for that individual, once again, hey, they lose some body fat, hit this little stall, maybe even increase body fat, lose more body fat, but regardless, because they didn't give up and because they were consistent, they end up reaching their goals. Now, since we're talking all about body fat, I do need to explain this because I get asked all the time, hey, Joe, I got this muffin top, right? I got this spare tire. I got these love handles. How do I get rid of the belly fat? Now, you got to understand this, that you cannot spot reduce body fat in any area, your stomach, your chest, your back. You can do things to improve on those designated areas, like working out, right? Building muscle in that area. That obviously helps big time. But a good mindset perspective that I want you to keep in mind when it comes to overall fat loss and how it kind of works is, think about this big pool. And let's say one of your kids decides to, have this empty bucket, and they go up to this pool and they're dumping the bucket right into the pool. They got all this water collected inside of it now, and they're dumping it outside of the pool now. And they're doing it for like an hour, right? They're just putting the bucket into the water, dumping it out, putting the bucket into the water, dumping it out, right? So they're doing that for an hour or two. What then happens to that water? Okay, it's the very simple, question to answer. But is the water just flat, and then all of a sudden where your kid was at, there's like this big dip, and it's defying the laws of gravity, right? And it's just like this huge dip of, space between where they were dumping the water out of the pool, right? No, right? I'm pretty sure we can answer that safely. Like, no, that's not how it works. All the water goes down at once. All the water goes down at once, right? So even though your kid is, way over here on the opposite end of the pool, guess what? As he's dumping the water out, all of that water is going down. Well, that's how it works on your body as well. So you need to keep that in mind, okay? And typically for most people, especially guys, they will lose, the most amount of body fat first in their face, in their upper, back, their shoulders, their arms, their upper chest, and then it starts to get to their midsection. Okay, so the midsection for guys and for girls, it's always the last little part. I like to say it like this: you'll never see somebody walking around with, let's say, a fat face, fat arms, fat chest, right? Like they got the man boobs, but yet they got six-pack abs. That individual does not exist unless you're playing video games or something like that. Like they just don't exist at all. So realistically, keep in mind that as you're on this fat loss journey, right, trying to improve your health, trusting the process, but also understanding that slow and steady wins the race. You got to have some patience. If you want six-pack abs, hey, focus more so on the nutrition. Focus on getting your steps in. Focus on obviously training your core to build lean muscle tissue in that designated area. But keep in mind, right? Fat loss all comes down at once. You can't spot reduce any kind of body fat. This is great information for you to know, once again, how your body works when it comes to losing body fat. As after obviously checking your data, tracking everything. Our members at Heartletics, obviously, they just use our app where they can see everything, right? We can have that data, presented to them where they can start to learn, once again, their trends based on everything that they're doing. But keep in mind, okay, this is great information to know, because now mentally, I want you to think about if you're taking a road trip, and let's say you're on the highway, and let's just say that, hey, you come up to all these cars and there's a traffic jam. Well, realistically, if let's say you have a GPS, and let's say it's only like, heavy traffic for 15 minutes, you're going to be like, okay, cool. No sweat at all. I'll just wait. It's only 15 minutes. It's not like you're going to turn around and pull a, some kind of weird U-turn in the middle of the freeway or anything like that, or, pull off the next exit and take this huge detour from your end destination. No, you're going to say, okay, hey, there's 15 minutes left. I'm okay, right? Like, I'm not going to freak out about it. Well, the reality is this. Most people, they don't have a GPS when it comes to their overall health and fitness goals. And maybe that GPS is having a coach that can actually teach you about your trends, right? So that way, guess what? You don't have to freak out if you're not losing any body fat. You can have somebody that's actually educating you based on, once again, your body type and how it works. And once again, that's kind of like what we focus on at Heartletics with our members. We're making sure that everything is all personalized for them, but once again, teaching them. I'm sure you heard the phrase, you can either give a man a fish and feed him for a day, or you can teach a man how to fish and feed him for the rest of his life. Now I want to tell you about what truly matters when it comes to fat loss. And it's not about, the number on the scale. It's not about your body fat percentage. It truly is about how you look and how you feel. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't even remember the last time I weighed myself. I don't remember the last time I even checked my body fat percentage, nor do I care. And the reason why I don't care is because, one, the digital scales and even just doing the tape measure, to check your body fat percentage, there's too many variables, and I don't like that. I personally do not like that at all. Meaning that with the digital scales, right, it's taking all these calculations, and it's like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, where, hey, if let's say the weight goes up, your body fat increases as well, because it's just going off those different metrics, right? Which doesn't make a lot of sense because somebody could be putting on lean muscle tissue, right? And that weight goes up, but their body fat percentage actually doesn't. It either stays the same or it drops. The muscle, right, in terms of like also water retention, right, on these digital scales, it's all these different calculations, all these two different variables where if you think about it, somebody could be progressing so well, but if they're using, let's say, these scales or constantly checking, with the tape measure, their body fat percentage, which it's good to know here and there, but you got to keep in mind, right, that some of these variables, they offset these numbers. And if you're too emotionally attached to those numbers, right, whether it's the weights, whether it's the body fat, it's going to be self-sabotage. And that's why personally, I don't weigh myself. I personally don't check my body fat percentage because one, the variables don't really add up, but it doesn't really matter at all. So what do I do that helps me stay roughly around, let's just say 10 to 15% body fat all year round, where at the end of the day, I love how I look, I love how I feel? Well, hey, that's the answer right there. I go off of how I look and I go off of how I feel. So when I wake up in the morning, I go to the bathroom and I take off my shirt and I look at myself in the mirror, okay? And I want to simply just see, how am I looking? If I see that, oh man, my 6-pack abs are now 4-pack abs, obviously I know I got to make some adjustments. Maybe I got to be a little bit more dialed in with my nutrition. Maybe I got to focus on getting more steps in. Maybe I need to focus on drinking more water, maybe a better form of recovery so I'm, prioritizing my sleep more, because that all adds up into play when it comes to losing body fats and being healthy. So it's like, first and foremost, I'm taking a big picture of how I look, and then I'm going off of how I feel. So I could look great, but let's say if I'm like cutting out my carbs and, eating very little calories, I could feel like crap and my workouts could suffer and I might not have any energy in the gym. I don't want to feel that way, right? So I like going off of how I look and how I feel to really justify how I'm progressing. So once again, I look at myself in the mirror. Hey, am I happy with how I look? And like, am I roughly around the body fat percentage that makes me feel comfortable and confident in my own skin? If the answer is yes, great. Then I go off of, how do I feel? If I'm like super strict on the calories and macros and, I am just eating the foods that I don't want to eat, like I'm not feeling the best. So am I having the flexibility in terms of my nutrition where I'm fitting in my favorite foods? Am I also having the flexibility where I have tons of energy to play with my son, tons of energy, right, throughout the course of the day, tons of energy, right, for obviously lifting the weights? Those are the biggest metrics that you really need to take account of. And it has nothing to do with the number on the scale. It has nothing to do with your body fat percentage at all. It's all about how you look and how you feel. Because here's the reality that you also need to know. If let's say, you go out to eat at a nice restaurant, you go on a nice date, anniversary dinner, something like that. If let's say you don't know what is going on behind the scenes, right? The chef, the cook, right? They could be cooking with different oils or anything like that, different sodium that's going to be on that food that you're consuming. Well, that's going to lead to water retention. So it's like you could be crushing it all week long, right? Go out to eat the night before and you're maintaining some water retention from all the sodium. But if you don't even understand that, like think about how discouraging that is if you're too emotionally attached to the number on the scale or the body fat percentage. Because once again, like that's not accurate data. You just are retaining some water from all the excess sodium. Alcohol, it's the same way, right? You're going to be, having obviously some excess water that you're storing onto for a little bit. Give it a few days, your body fat is going to drop right back down. But this is why, once again, you should always go off of how you look. You should always go off of how you feel. Because those numbers, when it comes to the weight loss and the body fat, it could be so many different variables that go into play that could be, once again, mentally and emotionally self-sabotage for yourself. So let's next talk about plateaus. Because just because somebody doesn't lose body fat or, lose any weight after 1 week, that does not mean that they're in a plateau. If they don't lose weight or body fat after 2 weeks, that does not mean that they're in a plateau. I like to say, if you're not seeing any changes, right, in your weight, in your body fat percentage, in your progress photos, in your measurements after 3 to about 5 weeks, then yeah, maybe you're in a plateau. But hear me out, right? Before any adjustments you should be making when it comes to, when you're in this stall, this plateau, always do a recap as to what have you been currently doing. You know, if you're somebody that's not consistent with doing your workouts, if you're not pushing yourself in your workouts and focusing on progressive overload, if you're not getting enough steps, if you're not sleeping enough, right? If you're underneath all this stress as well and, you know, you're spiking your cortisol levels, that has a big factor when it comes to fat loss and losing weight. Well, guess what? Like, you got to take a look at what are the adjustments that you should be making first before there's any adjustments over here when it comes to making changes to, let's say, your calories or macros or your workouts to offset things. So you got to keep that in mind, right? Whenever you're hitting these stalls, this plateau, what areas of your life can you be making improvements on, right? Could it be lowering the stress? Could it be getting more sleep, drinking more water, getting more steps in, right? Being more consistent with your workouts, hitting your nutritional goals and being a little bit more dialed in. Always do that first. And the reason why I'm telling you to do that first is because if you're in a true stall and let's say you're consistent with everything that we just kind of mentioned, well, hey, you got some options over here on what you can do to better help you when it comes to losing more body fat. Now, obviously the answer is, hey, cut down your calories a little bit. And what I mean a little bit is like anywhere from 100 to maybe 200 calories per day. That's it. Very small things that you want to focus on. But I'm not a big fan of cutting out calories. I'm not. I'm more of a fan of like, what can we add in more? And maybe that's an extra training day. Maybe that is, once again, getting more steps in. Maybe that's eating more protein where, hey, you're not taking away anything. Maybe you're just making some adjustments to your macronutrients where now you're eating more protein because that's higher up on the thermic effect of food, which is going to help you overall lose more body fat. Okay? Now, if you're doing all those things, then yeah, you can start cutting away at the calories, but do it very small and very slowly. You know, cut out, once again, 100 to 200 calories and see what happens after a week or two. No trending in the right direction. Hey, do it again. There's going to be a certain point where you get to the bottom of the barrel, though, when it comes to your calorie budget. And I always like to say this, take your body weight, multiply it by 8. That's it. Take your body weight, multiply it by 8. That's going to give you pretty much like that bottom of the barrel. Now, if you're somebody that has been eating less than that, the bottom of the barrel, odds are you might have a slow metabolism, okay? And if you're at this stall where you're at the bottom of the barrel and you're like, okay, what do I do next? You got to focus on a reverse diet. And that's why understanding what works best for your body type, how to properly eat, how to properly train is so important because there's a lot that goes into this. And this is why at Heartletics, it's not like, you know, these fad diets that you see out there where it's like, oh, just cut out your carbs, right? Where they don't actually teach you about cutting out your carbs, is you're just losing water weight. That's all it is. You know, it's like they don't actually teach you how to do things properly. You know, same thing with these one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter programs. Or once again, nobody's educating you on how to train properly for your body type, how you can work out in a way that's enjoyable and sustainable where you're constantly seeing progress. But most importantly, like most programs out there and diets, they lack accountability. And accountability is the key for everything in terms of if you want to be successful, truly have success. You got to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people in your corner that's helping you, encouraging you every step of the way. As I mentioned earlier, having a coach is kind of like having a GPS where, hey, they're teaching you how to get, you know, to your end destination. They're teaching you also about, you know, what happens when there is a roadblock or a construction zone, right? How to reroute and still help you get to your goals. So just keep that in mind because when it comes to somebody being successful on their fat loss journey, it boils down to really having the proper knowledge and having the right people in their corner to support them. That way they can stay consistent and be held accountable and on track for their goals. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode going over different fat loss trends and most importantly, just a bigger picture of how fat loss truly works and what to focus on the most, which is once again, how you look and how you feel. And lastly, fat loss is not linear. You need to constantly remember that every time you're not seeing the progress that you want. Slow and steady wins the race. Always stay consistent and focus on being that 1% better each and every day than who you were yesterday, and I promise you will have success. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below with your biggest takeaway, and as always, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Guys, this has been Coach Joe with Heartletics.com, and I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Peace out, Girl Scouts.